how's everything going these days? Are you staying pretty busy, I'm guessing?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm saying, you can see, I'm in my son's art gallery. Actually the business here, since the strikes, it's everybody has completely abandoned the United States. Not everybody, but a good chunk of the business. It's all in Europe and it's all in Canada. So, where I worked, there are freelancers and people still have kids in college, and it's like, you know what? My kid needs help. I help him install, move things around. So, and run the shop occasionally. So I took a little break. I may go back because my phone hasn't stopped ringing. People saying, hey, I got this project. It's like, hey, I'm not doing that anymore. But, so I'm thinking, actually I've just in the last couple of months decided to take a little step back. But like, I think we when we spoke, getting that 1,000 credits was just like, well, that'll never happen again. I know a handful of other ADR mixers that have hit that mark, and it's like, been there, done that, seen it all. So we'll see. My hope is that it does come back, but it's interesting to watch that, we saw years ago when Los Angeles lost a lot of the business to like Louisiana, to Georgia, and in many ways, this feels like the same thing, just going a different way. So,
yeah.
But, but that temper all that too. But that being said, prior to the pandemic, think about it. Amazon was trying to make their mark. Netflix was making their mark. And so the streamers were big and active. And so we'll never, I don't think the entertainment business could hold up, do exactly the amount of work we did, like 16, 17, and 18, 19. It was crazy. It was just completely off the hook. All the Marvel series I worked on, to be quite honest, we sat back and thought, this is unsustainable. There's no way we can keep it, because in particular, the Marvel stuff, this series, Loki and Ms. Marvel and, all the ones we worked on, they were like doing 10 feature films. It wasn't like doing 10 episodics. It was like full on, sky's the limit as far as special effects and cast and time and ADR and mixing. And so it was pretty wild. So that's kind of what I'm up to now. I'm sort of, I do have a project. I'm helping the Georgia Film Academy has to have somebody that's done this for a living look at their program every 3 years. And so I'm in the process of doing that right now. But other than that, it's a well-needed break. I've never, in my entire 47 years of doing this, been able to say, you know what, I'm going to be gone for 5 days, and nobody says a word. So it's been nice. I'll be honest with you.
No, that's good. I'm sure. In terms of that, so how did you get started in your career? Was sound something you'd always wanted to do? Did you stumble into it?
Kind of. It's interesting. I stumbled into it, but I think in a way, it was interesting to look back and know that as a kid, I love music, man. We had my parents in 1958, the year I was born, they bought this reel-to-reel recorder. I don't know why they did, but they did. And so my brothers and sisters and I would mess with it all the time. It had 2 speeds, so we could do Alvin and the Chipmunks. We could play stuff backwards. It was a source of endless entertainment for us. We do our own radio shows and stuff. And I also dug music. Like I said, I dug music. I really wanted to learn to play something in the worst way. And so I guess I was 11 years old, and before my brother got to go spend time in the Army, he taught me how to play guitar. And by the time he came back, I was already playing in the group in the church. It was like a year, 18 months later, whatever it was. I woodshed it. I went ham on that thing. And so I thought, and at the same time too, my Christmas gifts would be, these electronic sets to build crystal radios or whatnot. I love messing with electronics and love music. So unbeknownst to me, I was setting a path to do what I do. And also that the thing that was different when I was young is that the drinking age around the country was 18, and I grew up right by a university. Mm. So 7 nights a week, there are at least a half a dozen clubs, if not a dozen clubs, operating with live music every single night. So rather than work McDonald's or Burger King, I played bass. And that's, I kind of, that was my first real gig, was playing in bands. And so by doing that, we did our own PA. So I learned how to how microphones work, how mic preamps work, what mixing a little bit was about. And this is all through high school and into college. And then I just remember reading that a guy named Bill Halverson was an engineer who grew up in Cincinnati as well. And he had done the Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young records. I'm like, wow, somebody from Ohio did that. That's pretty cool. So I, think I'm going to spend my life in music school, and I go and I audition. I don't get in. So plan B was a university, Xavier University, which I was really out of my price range, but they had literally a full-time, 24-hour, high-powered radio station that got into three states, and they let the kids run it. So I go in there day one, don't know a soul, don't know anything about radio. And they take me on a tour, and I walked into the production room. This girl was editing tape with a razor blade. I'm like, all right, what's that? She goes, well, I got this 3-minute song, and my class project is to make it 60 seconds. Really? You got to show me that. And she did. And I would play a gig from that day forward. I got my radio shift from midnight to 4 a.m. I was thrilled on a Thursday night. And I would come in after band gigs and just mess around in the production room. Tape echoes and 2 machines and whatever I could do. And, it was a lot of fun. It's like really something I just absolutely adore. I couldn't believe I was allowed to do it. So I'm running out of money. I can't afford to go to Xavier. No way. Coincidentally, I go to a professor and I say, hey, I was working part-time for the city, working on golf courses, but that was seasonal work. I said, I just need a full-time, part-time job. And he goes, oh, so-and-so just left Audiocraft. So there was this 3-room facility in Cincinnati, Ohio that I had heard nothing about. And I walked in and literally that day got a job in the old days too, you'd have to make physical copies. So as a dubber, you take a reel-to-reel tape, put it on the 60 IPS high-speed dubber and knock out, hundreds of copies and send it around the country, radio spots or whatever. So that's really where I cut my teeth is the guys I worked with, some worked with James Brown, the man who gave me my job. So here I'm thinking that, this older guy, he's in his 60s, blah, blah, blah. He's got this studios. And I'm walking out one day and I said, hey, Mr. Herzog, I'm going to go see Earl Scruggs' review tonight up at Bogart's. He goes, hey, well, if you see Earl, tell him I said hi. Like, oh, you know him? He goes, yeah, I recorded Foggy Mountain Breakdown. Now, I don't know if anybody knows what that is, but that is like the seminal bluegrass tune. That's the top of the mountain. I was like, what? Come to find out that this guy also recorded I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry on Lovesick Blues with Hank Williams, Cincinnati, Ohio, as well as what's considered the first R&B record. So anyway, those are the people I just happened to fall into this place that I needed a job. I knew a little bit about microphones. I knew a little bit about editing, and that's how I cut my teeth, man. So, and I think the best part about that first gig was they did do a lot of educational materials. So the other engineers would record, 3, 4, 5 hours a day, like Century of 21 typewriting, second edition. And you'd have to do these time writings. They'd do it on 10-inch reels, big reels. And there'd be a stack from the floor, almost as tall as me. That was their day's worth of recording. They didn't want to edit that stuff. So they left it to me. And I spent years and years just cutting. And all those, that was probably the best skill I ever learned. And I tell that to anybody that comes in to talk to me, man, you want to be able to edit and literally have a conversation with you while I'm still wooka editing, it just becomes second nature. So I think that's the overview. Basically, I luckily was, had kind of like built the puzzle already, knew a little bit about music, knew a little bit about electronics, microphones, loved the work, and that's what I wound up doing. And then overall, I think at the end of the day, had I not gone into this business, I'd probably be a maitre d' or a bartender. Basically, that's my real gig, is that I interact with people and I get them waters and try to stay out of the way. That's what most of my job is.
How does the process start for something? Because you've worked on an insane amount of projects. So are you getting, like you're just saying, are you getting a phone call for like a film, a TV show, and then are people coming to you? Like, how does the process of ADR actually go?
Yeah, so in ADR, I mean, that's really how it works, and this is how this went down in Georgia. Is that I've been doing this a long time, and I was more of a sound designer and a mixer. I was years ago when I came to Atlanta. I worked for a company called Crawford Post Production. No relation to me, but Jess Crawford, really was into it and had financial backing, and we had the greatest gear ever made. So I was working on sync claviers, Neve consoles, blah, 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 making movies, doing tons of commercials. The very first program ever on network TNT, I mixed and sound designed. So I had experience doing ADR, dial-up replacement. And when the tax incentives hit, it was just this crazy right place, right time in that somebody knew, that we were lucky. We were the more well-known place in town. And a couple of the TV shows started at the same time. One was Drop Dead Diva. The other was a show called Past Lives. And one was at Sony and one was over at Technicolor. And anyway, I wound up doing the ADR on their shows. And almost immediately, they started telling their friends, and their friends told their friends and their friends and their friends. And word got out because, to be quite honest with you, there are three things on the planet people hate. One is going to the dentist, the other's going to the DMV, and the third is going ADR.
Yeah.
Some actors relish it. Some actors come in, they love to be able to look at the scene and go, oh, I can do that better. Many others realize it's like, we've done this intimate scene. We're here. We shot it. It feels good. It looks great. Why do I have to re-perform it? And the reasons why are always, there's noise that can't be overcome. Somebody might place a cup down right as you're saying a word. Action films, Ritter fans, lights make noise, cameras make noise. Sometimes it's performance, very rarely performance. Sometimes it's to propel the story. Almost any time you see a shot where there's the cameras behind somebody's, behind their head and they're talking to somebody and they're telling them what's going to happen next, that's all ADR because, you have to cut some scenes and figure out how to weave into that next piece. But really that's the thing about ADR. It seems like to anybody that knows what it is, seems like a fairly simple, probably the simplest of all tasks. And that is the farthest thing from the truth. And because I remember when I started getting more and more this ADR work, I thought, oh my goodness, I don't know if I could do this 8 hours a day. This just seems ridiculous. And then the more I got into it, realized that my job really is to help the actor and the sound, the mixers and designers too, because I've had the experience as a re-recording mixer, as an audio editor, or a dialogue editor, as a sound designer, that I can take shortcuts that nobody thinks about, or I can assure people that, okay, this whole scene is great, but just in this one tiny spot, we just got to replace a word because there's a noise we can't get out. There's a briefcase clip or something, and if you can get the actor to get back to the same place, pitch. It's all about their pitch, their performance. And for me, it's placement. And I spend my day saying, step up just a little bit, step back, and try to match. So I know I can get a good feel just because I've done it so much about where the boom mic was. And if you get that placement right, using the same microphone generally, and then help the actor work through it, it really turns out that, how I first got into it was the studios were saying, okay, I knew the technical part, so it wasn't like connecting was difficult. I understood it. As a matter of fact, when we moved to our new facility, there was this is many years ago, we were still connecting via ISDN. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's like copper wire. You could do like dial up 3 different lines and you'd have like 56 kilohertz transmission with almost no latency anywhere around the world. And in Los Angeles and New York, when that technology came out, they adopted a thing called Dolby Fax, which was the very first one. But to everybody else that got into it later, it seemed antiquated technology. Nobody did it. But since they still used it, you would have to bridge with another company. So if I had whatever, the aptX decoder, we'd have to hook up with San Francisco. San Francisco would then hook us up to the Los Angeles place. But if I had a Dolby Fax, I could go anywhere, anytime I wanted to. So that's what we did when we moved to the new facilities. I got a Dolby Fax, and that combined with people knew who I was. We were good technically. Secondly, we had the Dolby Fax. And then thirdly, where the business came from was the actors themselves. Because we always had, wasn't like written in our handbook or anything, but you will find one picture on the internet of me with an actor taking a picture, only because Melissa and I worked on all 12 seasons of The Walking Dead, and we've been friends for 30 years anyway. So it's like, okay, I'll take a picture with Melissa. But other than that, no autographs, no photographs. So go down the list, Janelle Monáe, anybody, most actors, if they go out of the house and they got to do ADR or something, they have to go as, Keke Palmer, instead of they come see me. It's like, oh, we're just, I meet him at they pull up, open the car door, take him upstairs, do the work, get done, come out. So it's all super professional so they can come in dressed, in sweats and know that nobody's going to want to take their picture. And that word got out pretty quickly. And so those were like the three big things. A, tax incentives. B, we have the technical knowledge. And then C, really the actors realize that, we're here to work. This is how this is going to go down. And so I would say the actors over the last, 10 years have probably been the people that have booked me the most, just because then you get short. And although you probably realize this along the way, it's a very small business we work in, I mean, there are maybe, there are probably hundreds of people that do ADR, but there are about a dozen that do 90% of it. There's probably, 10 really good ADR. Well, there's probably 24. That's because there's like 5 really great ones in New York. I think there are 3 great ones here in Atlanta, and then, probably maybe 24 in Los Angeles. But you watch movies, just keep looking. You'll see the same names over and over and over. And for that reason, because it's a tedious thing. The ADR mixer has to get out of the way. You have to be completely invisible to the process, and in many ways, surprise people with your speed is the other thing that I found was really important in that, again, understand where it's going to be sitting in the mix. And I listen to takes over and over and over again. So as we're going through, and so what we do, and the reason I get a lot of work is because there's a lot shooting in Atlanta. So not only am I doing, say, Hugh Jackman's doing filming in Atlanta, but I worked on his previous films, whatever he was working on. And or like the Stranger Things kids or whoever, actors have all kinds of side hustles. So a lot of animation pre-records as well. And that requires hooking up with studios basically around the world. And so, in many ways, just the right hand of the engineer and the sound supervisor and the directors wherever we are. And so, it really makes sense to just be as, it's literally almost as autonomous as possible for them. And it worked out well. I got lucky. I mean, when the tax incentives hit in Georgia, I think I had like maybe 60 or 70 IMDb credits. This was like 2009. And now here we are, 2025. It's well over 1,000. So it's like there was a lot of work in town for that time period. A lot of work.
So are the challenges that you're dealing with, are you being told by someone else, here, you need to fix this? Is that from a director? Is that like, how are you being told that information?
So the process is, they shoot dual system. And so, somebody takes, goes off and edits the program. It's generally the sound supervisor then is brought into the project early on and goes through and they, basically you start with the cut the editor gave you and you go through the dialogue and generally, when they do the edit, there's, you can have upwards, 20, 30 different mics open on us, depending on how many talent you have in a scene. But generally, the editor work with only what they call the mix track. So it's all the mics combined together, to a good extent on set. And then when they go back and the sound supervisor, then they have the cut and he starts putting together the soundtrack. He will go and have all the isolated mics and, so you have a boom. Sometimes 2 booms, lavs on everybody. And they go through and they start listening and think, oh, geez, the crickets in this scene are just way too loud. Or they decided to shoot in front of a waterfall or something, or at the ocean. It's really hard to pick up that dialogue, and so they assess, they try to clean up to a certain point and know because you do it. It's like, okay, isotope or whatever noise reduction will take care of this. We're going to be good here. But then there's plenty of places where, it's just, either, the actor could have said the name of a character wrong, or there's, again, noise is the biggest issue. And so whatever they can't fix from other takes or from cleaning it up, then they'll make a list. So the sound supervisor and dialogue editor, one or the other, will go through and say, okay, here are the spots we need to replace. The dialogue, you just can't hear it. We can't dig it out. It's going to be a mess. And then there's also, then that happens. And then as they screen, they go through and the directors and everybody gets involved and they're like, oh, gee, when we cut that scene out, now there's nothing no reason for them to have gone from here to there. How do we fix that? And then they say, well, we could just add a line here. So we'll just write something for this actor. Or you'll have a scene where, the actors are all there in a room that whatever is a Christmas party, a birthday party, something going on. The main characters are chatting with each other, but then you have all the other characters in the background. But, you notice it's like this when you do Loop Crew, all those characters in the background aren't talking. They're just miming, they're pretending to talk. So then they'll write loops for them too. And we'll go back and have their conversations in the background and add that. So it starts to stack up. Some of that is done in Loop Group, and then Loop Group is basically they have a scene like that. New York City street, bar, restaurant, all those people in there that look like they're engaged in conversation, pretending. So then you have to have a group of people come in and reperform those, whatever it is they think they're saying, police station chatter or whatever it happens to be. So yeah, it's all like laid out for me. The information I get are the cues, what actors are coming in. And then, and most studios are using, there's a couple of programs people use, but one is called EdiQ and EdiPrompt. That basically the editor that does a dialogue does it in EdiQ, and he can spit out a PDF copy of, so I have an actor's cue sheet and it tells me, the actor's name, the lines we're going to replace, where they are in the timeline, and then I can literally take that PDF file and drag it into their EdiPrompt program, and it'll put the text on screen for me. They'll put little wipes, so basically this is what ADR looks like. It's they used to call it looping because they used to physically tape that whatever you were replacing when it was on a mag reel and loop it and put beeps in front of it. So basically you hear 3 beeps go, or the measuring fourth beep. So on the screen too, you have these yellow lines, or mine are yellow. People use other colors, but and when the lines hit and where that imaginary fourth beep would be, you start talking. And we say it all day, trust the beeps, trust the beeps. And it really, you get into that tempo. And so some actors like to do it with headphones on and overlay almost everybody. That's the usual method, is that I'll play it for them a few times. They'll hear the loop, and then we'll start doing rehearsals, and they go in the record. So they're hearing themselves talking and into it, and then they actually talk over the top of themselves, which helps identify where the pitch is, pitch, speed, how fast it should be. That's generally how we do it, but some actors hate that. They don't like to do that at all. So they don't even like to see themselves. So there are a handful of actors that either I'll sample, just take the lines we're going to do, and then we call it hearsay. So I'll play it. All right, we got to get to the store. All right, we got to get to the store. All right, we got to get to the store. And then they'll repeat it. All right. And just like basically when you're a kid, mimicking your brother or sister. And so that system, they do more in Australia. We found that seems to be their favorite method, is to hear it and say it way. And that's the other thing about doing ADR. You have to be prepared to do whatever they ask you to do. So basically I get the cues from the sound supervisor, the actors generally with me, and then we'll hook up the studios, or now it's all Zoom. So the director can be on a Zoom in London, and the rest of the crew can be in Los Angeles. And, we all just interact real time together. As I roll my picture back, it rolls back wherever, or on the Zoom. It's easier. But yeah, it then becomes a process. And then as you're doing it, there is interaction. Like if you work on episodic series over the course of time, a lot of the principals will really take offense of what we call network notes. There's some executive says, hey, I don't really know if we understand he's talking to so-and-so. And the actor will be like, this is season 5. Of course I'm talking to so-and-so. And so then there will be discussion. I don't want to do that. And, so then there's sometimes, you have to try to convince people, oh, just give me one, just in case, because you never know on the mixtape. But, that's kind of I hope that made sense. That's kind of how the process works. So ADR is just a subset, and generally it's like completely and totally as close to the end of the process as possible. Generally, it's like I've worked on TV shows where I've done ADR on a Tuesday and the show's in the airs on a Wednesday, or a Thursday. It's just really can be a fast turnaround because again, they try, in most cases, the intent is to keep production, Everybody, the director was there. They got the performance they wanted. The actor gave the performance they wanted. So messing with it can be tedious. And so, often said that it's almost the process is almost more of a psychology hack than it is a technical hack, because I feel like some days I'm just talking people off the ledge because they do not want to be there. So you can find a way to make it engaging, make it fun, and I think we worked that out. I figured that out and got really lucky. Right place, right time. To be honest with you.
And doing movies and TV like The Walking Dead, or there's Wednesday, and movies like Superman or Minecraft, whatever else it might be. Is there a difference really from movies to TV, or is it just you have more episodes, quicker turnaround? Or are there any particular challenges that you think of as like maybe having been major learning lessons, anything over the years that you've learned? Sort of a multi-part question, but any standouts there?
I mean, they're very similar. Both are very similar. I mean, we certainly replace way more dialogue in films than in television. He let a lot more slip in television. Not slip, but just the time frame is a little condensed. It's like if you can make it work, it's going to work. I mean, the things that we've learned, it's like just the transition to now Zoom sessions rather than the ISDN, and then a lot more, especially in the animation world, a lot more facial capture. I do a lot of recording, and that is something I did learn during pandemic. So we do these video games, and so you facial capture while we're doing ADR. So some circumstances, the body motion has already been captured by not even the actor who's in it, then they come back and they capture their face. Well, when we first started doing it, there'd be somebody came in and he was the guy that messed with the camera and got the help. I don't know if have you ever seen these witness cams? Basically the headset, the camera right there. So they adjust the focus and everything. And then somebody else would be there to just hit the record button. And then I would record, and then have a secondary recorder down the hall, and there'd be a script supervisor and director. Pandemic hits, they'd start just sending the gear and go, here you go. And so I became the videographer. I did everything myself. So it was a little bit of a learning curve, but it was fun to figure it out. And I mean, those are the sessions that can, there are plenty of these sessions where, especially the animation stuff, and then even the live action now that they're doing so much facial capture and stuff. I'll set up multiple cameras for people, and when we did Lion King, the young man Braylon who played young Mufasa was in Atlanta, but Barry Jenkins, who was directing, was in London, and there's some talent in London and talent in Los Angeles. So basically, these sessions went like this. So Doc Kane out at Disney would have his people with him, and he would send me time of day time code from Los Angeles. And so I would feed that time code to my system that we're all chasing, and then the cameras. And then Barry, and then we're feeding everything, hopping it all to Barry and his people in London. And the three of us got this giant circle, audio takes coming in, video cameras going, playing the scenes for the actors off a clear view. So sometimes it could be a lot of plates in the air, but again, I was lucky that I worked for a guy when this Crawford post-production, Crawford Media, was just a behemoth, and we were into everything, graphics and motion control stands and all kinds of crazy stuff. But when we built the last facility I worked in, we were still tape-based. So we had the infrastructure. So as far as, video wiring, audio wiring in every format you can think of. There's MADI, there's HDMI, there's all kinds of stuff all over the building. So when somebody comes in with this spec sheet that's specific to what they do, most other studios be like, what are you talking about? I'm going to feed time of day, time code, and split it out to this guy and that guy and send this guy beeps it, but they're not going to get the beeps and just that kind of stuff. There's like, we started out in a analog/digital infrastructure, and it really worked out well. That it's great for me to solve problems, not problems, but, work in the way that the production wants to work. And so in many ways, I like their ways I like to work, but, I get a spec sheet from whomever I'm working for, and we do exactly what they ask, so makes it kind of easy.
Well, we have maybe about 8 minutes left or so. And I was curious, so with you staying as busy as you do you still get a chance to, or want to watch movies on your off time? Do you enjoy that, or are you so
Yeah, I mean, I think, and actually, when I think about it, we're talking about just with starting out, when I got into post production, so I worked at this three room facility, and we did a lot of commercials, and like anything that was synchronous, we did on 16 millimeter mag. That's how commercials were done, and then it's very early on electronic post production, synchronizing 24 track machines together with video machines, and it was, but I'm 19, 20 years old, man. I want to make records, I want to work with the Stones. And so that's really why I got in the recording business until I saw Star Wars. And I remember my friend was home from college. He said, man, we got to go see this movie. And I'm like, I don't want to see some Buck Rogers movie. Let's go see something else. And I go and watch the film and think, oh, that's what I want to do. And so it was, Ben Burton. And I remembered how much I loved American Graffiti. And once I started discovering Walter Murch's soundtrack is what really made that thing. That really kind of changed my direction. And then that's when, it became full on. And so then I became immersed. I love films. I love listening to stuff. I mean, I probably have a list of things that over the years that, my list is probably different than everybody else. But I remember when my oldest was young, we would watch Toy Story, and it was that soundtrack is ridiculous. Gary Weitstrom is a genius, I mean, as I told him one time, I ran into him, I said, man, I didn't hear a single sound effect in that. He's like, what, was the soundtrack off? I said, no, what you created was so believable. I've been doing this forever. I know almost every sound effect that's ever been recorded, in the traditional libraries, and everything he used, the footsteps, the backgrounds, everything is just spot on perfect. Same with Jurassic Park. I mean, both Gary Weitstrom too. But I dig like Oppenheimer. I think Richard King is a genius. I'm not a fan of Nolan's mixes, generally, but I thought Oppenheimer, there was it worked very well in that thing, and then other pieces that are just like Birdman. That whole jazz drumming thing was just what a great way to present a soundtrack. And then Baby Driver, those guys, familiar with the way they shot that, is they had playbacks. And so as he's walking through Atlanta, he's listening to the music, or they doing the gunfight scenes there. It was all choreographed, and they're doing it real time. So I like watching. I can get frustrated because everybody talks about, man, why am I constantly messing with my volume control? Why can't, and that's more, has more to do with, the down mixing. Nobody's taking the time to really do a proper stereo down mix, which I always feel that should be part of the deal, because still well over 90% of us are still watching, in our bedrooms at night, watching whatever streamer we're watching. So it's a little disingenuous, I think, that everybody says, no, it's because the actors mumble. No, it's this. No, it's because you're mixing now that it used to be 5.1, it was kind of a problem. Now that you've added like 11.1, you've got extra tracks, unless you wrangle it correctly and you're paying attention. I mean, it's, you're going to have that exact same thing. I get it. It's exciting. You're in a big mix room and that music hits, and in a movie theater and in a big room, that's great. But in most people's homes, that's a bad mistake.
Yeah.
Just me preaching.
No, because my wife and I felt the same way, and we just recently got a surround sound kind of sound bar system. And that's definitely helped some, because the last few TVs that we've had, we have that exact same issue, that where the music will be insanely loud, people's dialogue will be at the bottom, or vice versa, and it's so frustrating. And I know it's not the fault of the people like yourself or anything, or the actors. It's just this culmination of things. But
yeah, it's usually, well, part of it too is budgets. You get a big nice mix, and everybody buys off on the mix, and then now I build things differently. I was always down mixing and checking as I went, so maybe my mixes weren't as dynamic and as huge. I don't think that's the case, but, as far as I'm concerned, I don't care what it is you're doing. Dialogue wins. That's where I spent most of my life, is making sure that you can hear what people are saying. I mean, the picture could go off forever as long as you can hear what's going on. I think people can stay engaged and in tune. And the minute you lose that, that's, that really is, that's the story is what's important. Again, I've always felt that, in doing dialogue or doing ADR and even in mixing and sound design, the idea is to stay out of the way, be invisible, don't let people know that, let them really feel like they're in that place with that person. And I think that always felt like that worked better for me.
Yeah. Well, Greg, I really do appreciate you taking the time to talk. It was great chatting with you. I feel like I've learned a lot just in this last 40 minutes. Yeah, and I would love to chat again sometime down the line. But you've been a part of so many amazing projects that I love, and probably more than I'll ever know or realize. But it's just really great talking to you. So thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure. Yes, it's I consider myself one of the luckiest people on the planet. It's been a crazy ride.
Yeah. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon, all right?
Great. Thanks. I really appreciate it. Have a good day, my friend.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
See ya. Bye.